Dr. Valara Risson stood frozen in the observation room of the Galactic Medical Research Station. Her three eyes blinked rapidly as she watched the human subject through the reinforced glass. The data streaming across her holographic display made absolutely no sense. She ran the calculations again. Then a third time. The numbers remained the same. The human male, who had introduced himself simply as Marcus Webb, sat calmly on the examination table. He was whistling a strange melody while a level 4 pain stimulus was being applied to his left arm. Level 4. The same intensity that had caused a Draxian warrior to lose consciousness within seconds. The same level that had killed a Melvori test subject 3 years ago. Marcus was whistling. Valara pressed the communication button with a trembling finger. Researcher Webb, how would you describe your current sensation? The human looked up at the speaker mounted in the ceiling. He shrugged his shoulders in that peculiar way humans did. Feels like a strong pinch, I guess. Maybe like when you bump your elbow on a table. Nothing too bad. Are we starting the actual test soon? Valara turned to her colleague, a four-armed Grenton named Torek. His pale blue skin had gone almost white. This cannot be accurate, she whispered. The calibration must be wrong. Torek shook his massive head slowly. I checked the equipment myself this morning. 3 times. Everything is functioning perfectly. He gestured toward the display with 2 of his arms. The human is experiencing level 4 pain stimulus. His vital signs show minor elevation. Minor. His species classifies this as mild discomfort. The implications of this discovery began to settle over Valara like a heavy blanket. For 200 years, the Galactic Coalition had studied pain responses across all known sentient species. They had established universal pain scales. They had developed medical treatments and anesthetics based on these scales. They had even created laws limiting the use of certain weapons because of their pain-causing potential. And now, everything they thought they knew was being challenged by a single human who was asking if the real test was going to start soon. Valara gathered her courage and spoke into the communicator again. Researcher Webb, we are going to increase the stimulus to level 5. Please inform us immediately if you experience any distress. Marcus gave a thumbs up. This was another human gesture that Valara had learned meant agreement or approval. She nodded to Torek, who adjusted the controls. Level 5 pain stimulus was reserved for extreme medical emergencies only. It was the threshold where most species began to experience permanent psychological trauma. The Galactic Medical Council had strict regulations about its use. Special permits were required. Counseling sessions had to be arranged for any subject exposed to this level. Marcus scratched his nose. Yeah, okay. That one I can feel a bit more. Reminds me of the time I stepped on a piece of broken glass at the beach. Had to hop to the car on 1 foot. He laughed at the memory. My wife thought it was the funniest thing she ever saw. Torek dropped his datapad. The device clattered against the floor, but neither researcher moved to pick it up. They simply stared at the human who was now telling a story about his family vacation while experiencing what should have been agonizing torment. Over the next several hours, Valara and Torek documented everything. They increased the stimulus gradually, taking careful measurements at each stage. They monitored brain activity, heart rate, hormone levels, and neural responses. They asked Marcus to describe his sensations using their standardized pain vocabulary. At level 7, Marcus said it felt like a bad sunburn. At level 9, he compared it to hitting his thumb with a hammer. At level 11, which was the highest level ever recorded in galactic medical history, Marcus finally stopped smiling. His jaw tightened. Sweat appeared on his forehead. His hands gripped the edges of the examination table. Okay, he said through clenched teeth. That one actually hurts. Can we take a short break? Valara immediately terminated the experiment. Medical drones rushed into the examination room, but Marcus waved them away. He stood up from the table, stretched his arms above his head, and walked to the water dispenser in the corner. "Not bad," he said, filling a cup. "I have had worse." The research team spent the next 6 months expanding their study. They brought in more human volunteers from the nearby Earth colony. They tested men and women, young adults and elderly individuals, athletes and office workers. The results were consistent across every subject. Human pain tolerance exceeded every known sentient species by magnitudes that the researchers struggled to comprehend. A level that would cause a Selvari to go into cardiac arrest was described by humans as uncomfortable. Stimuli that would permanently damage the nervous system of a Crothian was considered painful but manageable by human standards. The scale had to be completely redesigned to accommodate this new understanding. The news spread quickly through the coalition. At first, many dismissed the findings as exaggeration or error. Surely these soft, fragile-looking creatures from a small planet in an unremarkable solar system could not possess such an extraordinary characteristic. Other species had natural armor. Some had venomous defenses. Many had superior strength or speed or intelligence. What did humans have? Smooth skin, relatively weak bodies, short lifespans compared to most galactic civilizations. But they could endure pain that would destroy others. A Grenthan philosopher named Morith was the first to understand the broader implications. He published a paper that sent shockwaves through the academic community. In it, he argued that pain tolerance was not simply a medical curiosity. It was the foundation of everything that made humanity dangerous. Because of their ability to endure suffering, humans had achieved things that other species considered impossible. They had surgery without anesthesia for thousands of years of their history. They had continued fighting in battles with injuries that would have incapacitated any other warrior. They had survived diseases and accidents that should have killed them. They had pushed their bodies beyond reasonable limits in pursuit of goals that seemed trivial to outside observers. Humans ran races that lasted for entire days. They climbed mountains that offered no resources or strategic value. They willingly exposed themselves to extreme temperatures, crushing pressures, and toxic environments simply to prove they could. And perhaps most frightening of all, they had developed an entire culture around the concept of working through pain. Their languages contained hundreds of phrases encouraging individuals to ignore suffering and continue forward. No pain, no gain. Walk it off. Rub some dirt on it. Push through. Mind over matter. Other species viewed pain as a warning signal that demanded immediate response. Humans viewed it as an obstacle to be overcome. The military implications became apparent quickly. Coalition strategists began reviewing historical records of human conflicts. They found accounts of soldiers continuing to fight after receiving wounds that should have been immediately fatal. They discovered stories of pilots maintaining control of damaged aircraft while suffering injuries that would have rendered other species unconscious. One particular account gained widespread attention throughout the coalition. It described a human soldier during something called World War II who had lost an arm to an explosion. Rather than seeking medical attention, the soldier had picked up his weapon with his remaining hand and continued advancing toward enemy positions. He had survived the battle and lived for another 40 years afterward. The Selvari Military Command issued an emergency advisory to their forces. Engagement protocols with human combatants were revised. The previous assumption that inflicting sufficient pain would neutralize human threats was abandoned. New strategies focused on complete incapacitation rather than graduated response. But it was not only military organizations that took notice of the research. Medical professionals across the coalition began consulting with human doctors. They learned about human approaches to pain management that seemed almost barbaric by galactic standards. Childbirth without medication. Dental work with minimal numbing. Recovery from major injuries through exercises that other species would classify as torture. Yet humans not only survived these experiences, they often expressed pride in enduring them. A Crothian psychologist conducted interviews with human subjects about their relationship with pain. She was disturbed by what she discovered. Humans did not simply tolerate pain. Many of them seemed to view it as a necessary part of growth and development. They spoke of painful experiences as building character. They described suffering as something that made them stronger. One human woman told the psychologist about running a marathon. Her muscles had cramped. Her feet had developed bleeding blisters. Every step had sent waves of agony through her body. She had finished the race and immediately signed up for another one the following year. When asked why, she simply shrugged. Same gesture Marcus Webb had made years earlier in that first examination room. Because it was hard, she said, and I wanted to prove I could do it. The psychologist ended the interview early. She needed time to process what she had heard. 5 years after the initial discovery, Dr. Valara Rickson published her comprehensive study. It was titled Pain and Persistence: Understanding Human Biological Extremity. The document ran over 1,000 pages and contained research from hundreds of contributors across dozens of coalition worlds. Her conclusion was simple but profound. Humanity had evolved on a planet that was actively trying to kill them: predators, diseases, natural disasters, extreme weather, toxic plants, venomous creatures. The list of dangers was nearly endless. Any species that developed on such a world needed extraordinary resilience to survive. Pain tolerance was not a random gift. It was an evolutionary requirement. The final section of her study contained a warning that many coalition leaders found unsettling. Valara argued that pain tolerance was only the most obvious example of human endurance. She suggested that humanity likely possessed similar extreme capabilities in areas that had not yet been studied: emotional resilience, psychological recovery, adaptability to new environments, persistence in the face of failure. If humans could endure physical pain that would destroy other species, what else could they survive? The question remained unanswered. But throughout the coalition, a new understanding of humanity began to take shape. These creatures were not the fragile, short-lived beings they appeared to be. They were something far more impressive and far more concerning. They were survivors. Whatever the universe threw at them, they would find a way to endure it, and they would keep moving forward. Marcus Webb returned to his home on the Earth colony after the initial research was completed. He received a medal from the Galactic Medical Council for his contribution to science. He displayed it on a shelf in his living room, next to a photograph of himself running his first marathon and a trophy from a competitive eating contest he had won in his youth. When visitors asked about the medal, he would tell them the story, the tests, the observations, the shocked expressions on the faces of the alien researchers. Then he would shrug. Same gesture. Same simple acceptance of something that changed galactic understanding forever. It hurt a little, he would say, but not that much.